everyone. I wish so much that we could be together in person to see, hear, and feel each other. But we are in this electronic mode, and this is the sermon video that I have made for April 26th for you to be used during the Zoom worship service and to be posted online for anyone, anywhere, anytime to see when they access our website. I begin this sermon with lament. I begin this sermon naming the aches, pains, heartaches, sorrows, and fears. Let us allow ourselves to acknowledge the hurting places, those whose homes do not feel safe, who cannot get enough food, those who struggle to care for their children and their elders safely, the children who long to have a playmate, the teenagers and young adults who had hoped to be in a graduation ceremony, their parents and grandparents who had hoped to be with them to witness the rites of passage, those who wanted to be present at the time of a birth. We hear the lament of longing to hug, to hold, to touch, to whisper in an ear. We know the emptiness of loneliness. How vast, how deep, how long will this loneliness be? We hear the lament of wondering when sickness will come, when death will come, wondering if we will be ready. We acknowledge the burden of guilt, of wondering if one may have infected another. We grieve that those who are grieving cannot gather together. There is a strain of blame when another passes too closely, feels too careless. We hear the anger of those who work hard and wish others would stay home. We hear the anger of those who fear for their livelihood and families because they are asked to stay home. The longing of those who wish to work, to make a difference, to lend a hand, to be of use. We fear because we know that fear can make a people weak to division and blame. We hear the ancient cry of those who feel on the margins and wonder if they are included. The anger that yet again, having less means that one has less yet again when misfortune hits us all. That trying to get ahead is harder for those who were already behind. The ancient striving of those with resources to give enough to be generous in the ways that truly make us a whole society, not just separate parts of a society. Wondering, when will this end? And what will the end look like? Will there ever be a time of ease again? A time of comfort? These are the laments, the sorrowful wails, the quiet anguish of humans throughout history when they have faced a plague. Over 2,000 years ago in ancient Greece, in Athens, there was a great plague in 430 BC. A person named Thucydides survived and recorded his observations. Now, let's pause a moment to think about his worldview, because he and his contemporaries did not believe that humans are born good. They believed that humans become good by choosing to do good. They believed that humans become brave by choosing courage, that we overcome the twin vices of self-interest and fear by actively rejecting them. Those last few sentences were a quote from Catherine Kalidas, a scholar of ancient Greece, and she tells us a bit more about actual quotes from Thucydides as he observed the way people behaved in the plague. He records, "The violence of the calamity was such that men, not knowing where to turn, grew reckless of all law, human and divine. He observed men who had hitherto concealed what they took pleasure in now grew bolder. So for those of you with a humanist worldview, perhaps you believe that humans are born good, or perhaps not. But perhaps you're having your theory, if you believe that humans were born good, you're having your theory sorely tested. The basic tenets of ethics is that individual needs need to be balanced with the good of the whole group. Right now, we see this in extremes, being done well and being done poorly. Individualism shows up when people make decisions solely based on their own preferences about changing jobs, changing homes, picking schools, options for food. Those have been normal for some people for many years, but now that individualism and its cost comes to the forefront. Those of you who do believe in the inherent goodness of all people may be questioning in recent weeks whether this is actually true, as you see leaders who allow social breakdown, people who flout the safety of others, people who blame and discriminate. Do they actually have inherent goodness? Our social contracts are being strained, and those who could always see the cracks are not surprised. And so I encourage us, what would it mean right now to take an attitude toward each person we meet, we see, we talk to, we write a card to? I need you to survive. I encourage those of you who are feeling a bit guilty that you have privilege to be safe, not to spend your energy on guilt. Let us all focus on what it means that we are interconnected and that one person's well-being depends on another. When one is safe, all are more safe. Let us expand the boundaries of what we means. And now I turn again and ask the question in a different way to some of you. What of those of you who believe in a God? Those of you who believe in a God may be asking, God, why would you allow this to happen? God, are you still there? This is an age-old question asked by those who feel abandoned with nowhere to turn. In times like these, many feel that their prayer lives are scattered. Although upon further reflection, I have been hearing many people say that when they reflect further, they rediscover that they trust God is close, even though their minds and hearts are so churning with fear that they can't turn their attention to God's comfort. Perhaps those who believe in God can accept a God who does not control everything, a God who cannot rewrite the actions of others. Perhaps the theists among us can find comfort in a God who comes alongside for the journey through the darkness, who nudges us toward kindness even when we feel frozen by fear. This is not a God who ends disease, but who gives wisdom and comfort to those who face the disease. There is a saying that has been attributed to many people over the centuries, from ancient Greece to modern Germany, and it says, beckoned or unbeckoned, God is present. And I offer this because within our congregation, we do have so many different ways of understanding the divine. And this is true in human relationships also. We can show caring without knowing how to fix something. We can tell a person we will listen, even if we have no answers. We can shower love on a person, and that can be enough to help them through the ache that has no end in sight. People throughout history have turned to hope and togetherness again and again, even despite pain and loss. After World War II, the United Nations began because people were horrified by what happened when people were divided. When I was a very small child, my father would tell me that if you want to get a group of people to hate another group of people, tell them that that other group of people is different. He said that's what Hitler did. I remember standing there in the kitchen, our turquoise painted kitchen with those counters that were gray and white. And when I have this memory of him telling me this, part of the image is also that my mother is saying, or kind of showing, she thinks that I was too young to learn about Hitler. But now looking back, I see a few things about that. I probably was too young to grasp and make sense of it, but I was old enough to put it somewhere in my memory bank and draw on it later in adult years. Also, I've come to see that using Hitler as the sole example of hatefulness does not serve us well. There are so many examples of atrocities around the world, and they happen on a spectrum. We need to pay attention to all of them, including our own. And so I beseech you now, I encourage you, talk to the children you know about what the world dynamics are. Tell them that what is happening now is not normal, and give them a new hope. I've been hearing so many of you say that you are grandparents at home and your own children are at home with their own children at home. And so you are spending time on video chats with your grandchildren regularly, some of you daily. I've also been hearing from some of you who are parents who are a bit overwhelmed with your children at home instead of in school. Use this time well. I believe you have the power to plant the seeds of a good idealism, a good justice in the minds of the next generation. Think of what they will need to know in the decades to come. Teach them to be strong in the most open-hearted way. Show them strong hands that are open hands. Cultivate alert minds that are relaxed minds. May we all have an upright backbone, housing a warm heart. Blessed be. Amen.